Welcome back to Yellowfin University. This lesson is starting to look into generating charts and the different ways to generate charts. So the very first method that we wanted to show you was probably the simplest, which is our assisted insights method. Now you may have remembered assisted insights from a previous lesson that we did in another track, which basically explained how you can use assisted insights within the dashboard. So this is the same thing, however, we're accessing it from the report builder. Now the key difference though is that the analysis that will happen here in the report builder is based on the fields that you drag into the table. Before, when we were on the dashboard, it was based off the fields within the data source, and Yellowfin actually kind of went away and pulled out things that weren't just part of that report. So that is a big difference. You've got to drag in the fields that you think are most important, and then it can run the analysis over it. Otherwise it runs the same way. So it's running algorithms across the data to then automatically generate visualizations and a narrative. And then again, you can save them. However, this time when you save them, they will actually get saved into our chart builder and you can customize them as you wish. So lastly, same thing here as the dashboard one. If you don't see these options that I'm showing you in the video, then make sure you just contact your administrator and get them to turn them on because they do need to get activated. So I'm going to leave this storyboard and let's go have a look at a report. Now I prepared one earlier for us, so here we go. Now I've dragged in a bunch of fields that I think are useful and that I'm wanting to sort of analyze. I want to look at some data over time across my different demographics and gender, and I'm looking at 3 key metrics in particular: how much we're invoicing, how much it's costing us, and how many athletes are attending. So they're the things that I've thought are most useful. Now, traditionally with the report builder, you would move from this stage, you would click up on charts and move to the chart builder. But actually, if you hold back a minute and use this yellow Smart Analytics button, which is our Assisted Insights button, this will then pop up with some extra options, which basically will run a wizard to automatically generate the charts for you instead of you having to manually put them together. So we get a few different options of what we would like to try to do. We can explain a metric, which is the same as the explain you saw on the dashboard, where it will explain any of the metrics that we choose: invoice, costs, athletes, from these. So I would simply choose that method and then choose which metric I want to run it on. The other options we have are to compare metrics. So perhaps I want to compare if there's a relationship between my invoiced amount and my costs, or the costs versus the number of athletes that are attending, anything like that. If there is a date field within your data, you will also see the option to compare dates. So then I could run, this year versus last year or something like that. And lastly, you could compare dimensions. So I could actually compare if there's a relationship between demographic and gender, or whatever fields I have dragged into my report. So let's just sort of have a play with a couple of these. Maybe let's just do a compare metrics, and I will compare if there is a relationship between my costs and the number of athletes attend. I want to know how many of my costs, do they go up if I have more athletes, or are they actually quite fixed costs? Now you can also select this advanced settings, which could actually allow you to tick on or off whether you wanted to analyze them against the other fields that are available. And also you can give Yellowfin an indication of if the value is high, if this is good, or if the value is low, this is bad. So I can pick whichever one I want there and then go continue. Now Yellowfin will run its analysis to compare those 2 different metrics, and it's going to run them across all the dimensional fields within the data. So I've got months and demographic and gender. Okay, so exactly the same as it did on the dashboard, we now get this sort of pop out that appears. We get a report heading, a visualization, and an explanation or some narrative around it. So I can very clearly see here as my costs and my athletes. So yeah, traditionally I can see that nice trend that therefore as my athletes are going up, so do my costs. We can scroll through these and have a look at what else there is. We can compare the metrics based on the demographics. We can have a look at it based on demographics again, but actually comparing the 2. This one here is a deviation of the gender, and so on and so forth. So it's scrolling through those and having a look at all of them. And I basically, exactly the same as the dashboard, I can go through and I can pick what I think is the most useful. So probably this one actually is, where I can really clearly see my different genders and the different demographics. And it is running a deviation here, so that difference between my costs and my number of athletes. So if I like this one, I can just simply press that add button and it will tick it off so it can be saved. Let's go and grab another one. What else was interesting? Maybe we'll do this one as well. Tick as many as you like, and then you can just close that menu. And you can always come back in and slide that back out if you wanted to check out any of the ones that you might have missed. Now, what that has now done is it has saved them to your chart builder. So if you move to your chart builder, you will actually see two charts have now automatically appeared here. So I've got my first one here, which is a deviation based on demographic, and then also the deviation based on age and demographic. Oh, no, sorry, not age, gender and demographic. Okay, let's jump back across to data. Let's just run one more. So again, I'm going to run another set of insights. This time, instead of comparing metrics, let's compare some dimensions. So I might compare demographic to, so I'm going to compare, my demographic field, and I'm going to compare a number of my demographics. So I'm going to compare my adventure camps to my relaxation camps. And I'm going to base that on costs. Again, there's those advanced options, so you can tick if you want to remove any of the ones that you don't think are relevant, and we can run those again. So off Yellowfin goes again, runs the analysis, regenerates a new set of charts for us. So now I can actually have a look at the two different dimensions that I chose, adventure versus relaxation, have a look at their costs. So I can very clearly see that adventure was a much higher cost. We can compare this to whether there was any relevance to gender. Perhaps there was a relevance over time. So I can actually see some nice seasonality to the data here, which is interesting. And I compare that over time based on those two different ones. So this one's probably my favorite. I'm going to tick that and again close that away. I'm going to move back to our chart builder. And now we have a third chart saved into our library.